Hey guys, and welcome back to the YouTube. Today I thought I would talk a little bit more about training because the last few episodes have been very nutrition focused. Obviously the previous episode was all about if it fits your macros, meal plan, and how actually structuring your day can help you achieve better progress and just simplify your life essentially. So the last one was very nutrition heavy. Obviously I am basically 2 weeks, pretty much a week and a half into this fat loss phase now. Today it is Monday and it will be 2 weeks on Thursday. So yeah, pretty much a week and a half into this fat loss phase, and it's a 10-week fat loss phase. So I'm basically documenting this 10-week kind of mini cut pre-prep phase and everything that's been going on. So I thought today I would do a little bit more of a training focused video because I wanted to talk a bit about how to structure training when you are basically in a fat loss phase and how this works. And I'll also touch on as well how you can just get the absolute most from your training and what you are essentially looking for when you're trying to drive your training forward and you're trying to get the absolute most you can from your progress. So I will film one of my sessions later this week and show you what a typical session looks like, but I thought I would just do a little bit of an intro and basically outline how your training should be structured to get the absolute most from your training and drive your progress forward. So hopefully this is helpful. In terms of the training, I'm going to talk you through what my training is currently looking like at the minute. I am on a 4-day split at the minute, okay, and I have been since I finished competing at the end of 2023. So my current split is I do a pull session, a quad focus leg session, a rest day, a push session, a glute and ham focus session, and then 2 rest days. And I've been running that, like I said, since the back end of 2023, and my plan hasn't changed. So it's been over a year now of running exactly the same plan. And that's something I think that gets brought up a lot, and definitely something that I used to struggle with in the past is how often do you need to change your training? How, when should you be kind of changing it up? And with this, the honest answer is if you are progressing within your training, so if you are getting stronger, if you are able to add more reps, if you are able to progress within your training, you don't need to change it because there's no point. You will just be holding yourself back from making more progress. And that's something that I definitely used to struggle with more in the past. I was always chopping and changing, looking for the next best thing and the new thing that was going to work to build my glutes or whatever. But one of the best things you can do with your training is just get the movements really good. So get really good with the form, really get the tempo nailed, and just go all in on your training plan. And one of the biggest things you're looking for when you're choosing your split is what is achievable for you. Because I used to run a 5-day split. I used to do a pull, push, leg, upper, lower split, which is a great split. I have multiple clients who are on that split, but for me I was just finding that it was getting to the point where I wasn't recovering very well, and then we were having to pull the volume down a little bit. And I just felt like I wasn't getting the most from that, so we pulled it back, and I found since pulling it back I'm able to train with a better intensity, my recovery is better, I go into the sessions better because I've had an actual rest. So there's no right or wrong when it comes to your training split. It is very much a case of finding what is going to work for you. The biggest thing when it comes to your training is what can you be consistent with, because that's the biggest thing. You don't want to be missing sessions. You want to be able to hit your sessions week in, week out, show up and smash them and be able to give them 100%. And obviously one of the key factors for building muscle and growing and just getting what you need from your sessions is being able to recover and then progress. So it's just about finding the split that is going to be achievable for you. That's one of the biggest things when it comes to actually making good progress is being able to actually stick with it and recover from it. And regardless of whether you are in a building phase or whether you are in a dieting phase, my training doesn't change. The only thing that would potentially change is that the volume comes down slightly when I'm in a diet phase and I get to the end of a big diet phase. If my recovery starts to flag, we might pull off the intensifiers, so the drop sets, or we might pull this, we might pull the sets down by 1 or 2 on the big movements as such. But the fundamentals of the actual training plan stay very, very similar. So obviously I'm dieting right now, so I've been the last year I've been building my food up, I've put the work into actually building some muscle. And when you are dieting, the goal is to just retain the muscle. Like, you might still build a little bit of muscle, but obviously the main goal of dieting is that you train hard, you retain the muscle, and then you pull the body fat off, which then reveals the muscle. So obviously that's what I'm doing at the minute. But if you are someone that is in a building phase and you want to optimize that, there's three key areas really that I would focus on. The first one that I would say is actually training with a good intensity. Like, this is the key thing, is you need to be training hard and you need to be training close to failure. So or at failure. So something I did was I would logbook my training, keep to the same plan and actually just aim to progress, whether that be an extra rep, slower tempo, a little bit more weight added on. And it's not going to be every session, it's not going to be every set, but over time you want to be progressing with those movements and you want to be actually training hard. That's the number one thing. Second thing that you want to be focusing on within your training is, like I said, you need to be actually following a plan that is hitting the muscle group that you want to develop. So if you want to be, growing your glutes, like, how much volume can you actually recover from? If you can, I've got some girls that are going into the gym training sort of glutes 3 times a week, they're hitting their legs 3 times a week, but it's also about training the muscle group as often and as hard as you can, whilst still being able to recover from that muscle group. And that is one of the key things that's going to drive progress. And it's about finding, what that looks like for you essentially. And that's going to be different for every single person. And then obviously recovery plays a massive role in that as well. Like, you need to be recovering. And then the third thing is actually eating enough food and eating in a consistent surplus. And like I said, this is something that I did basically for the whole of the last year, was ate in a consistent surplus through the year. That gives your body the energy it needs to train hard and the fuel it needs to actually recover and build that muscle. And then obviously once you do that for a prolonged period of time, like, I think realistically for females you're talking like a good 6 months plus really. Once you've done that for a long period of time, obviously you will over time build the muscle, and then you go into the fat loss phase like what I'm doing now, pull the body fat off, and then hopefully you have more muscle. So that's essentially how it works. And the training between the fat loss phase and the building phase, it doesn't really differ from a weight training perspective. Obviously the only thing that happens is when you go into a fat loss phase, obviously the food drops, the expenditure up, so that we can start to pull off the body fat. Okay, so I am going to take you through my current push session. I have already filmed this and I've done it with a little bit of a voiceover over the top, just to break down in a little bit more detail the session, and also some little tips just around what you need to focus on in your session. So I'm going to pop this video in here so you can go and watch and hopefully take some tips away from this. And then we'll finish off just talking through how to decide what split is going to be best for you and how to actually start moving forward with that split.
So this is one of my current push sessions. I would recommend always with your sessions, keeping the sessions the same. This allows you to actually progress with the movement. So the key thing here is actually starting off with, a good program in place, and then just really working on your form, working on your tempo, and just getting really, really good at these movements. I have been doing this plan for a long time now. I track all my numbers, and what this means is it allows me to really get stronger at the movements and actually make some good progress with them, and look at what I did last time and start to move those movements forward in the right direction. So that's the first thing. You want to actually follow a program. So I actually have 2 rotations. I have an A and a B for each session, which is very, very slightly different. But you can see even from this session, my session is not hugely long. This session takes me around an hour to do tops. It's not loads of movements. I make sure that I rest between the sets, and I make sure that I train with a really, really good intensity. And that is the second point. So point number 1, actually following a good program, getting really good at the movements. Point number 2, not having a super, super long session and actually just being able to train with a really, really good intensity. And then point number 3 would be to actually make sure that you are sticking with your program for long enough. So, you're not going to go in the gym and just gain a loads of muscle overnight. You know, you want to be actually spending some time giving your program enough time to do what it needs to do. And that's the key thing really with your training. This is my push session, and I also do a pull, a quad focus leg, and a glute and ham focus leg session. You can see in here I've got a range of movements. I've got lateral raise movements, 2 variations with the machine and the single arm. I've got 2 push movements, so both of mine in this session are shoulder press, and I've got 2 tricep movements. And you can see it's not a super extravagant session, it's just a well-programmed session that I then go in and train with a very, very good intensity at. So they're your 3 key points when it comes to actually programming your training. And I'm going to talk a little bit more around this after your session as well, in terms of what is going to be the right split for you. If you are currently someone that is maybe unsure what split works best for you and how to actually structure your training through the week. This is my final exercise in the session. So this is the single arm push down, and I do a little bit of abs and also half an hour cardio currently at the end of all of my sessions.
Okay, so final point in this training video. Like I said, I'm currently on a 4-day split, okay? So 4 different sessions over the course of the week. So I'm going to talk through some key things to think about when it comes to actually choosing the right split for yourself, making sure you are getting the most from the training that you possibly can, all right? So the first thing that you want to look at with your training is how many days can you actually commit to, because the biggest thing when it comes to your training is you need to be able to get the sessions in consistently. Like, there's no point doing a session and then not being able to do that same session for like 3 weeks, because you're never going to get enough consistency to actually make some good solid progress with that session. So the first thing is think about how many days you can commit to, you know, whether that's 3, whether that's 4, whether that's 5. I would say if you're wanting to really optimize building muscle and getting stronger and developing your physique, you know, you probably want to be training 4 to 5 times a week. But you can still make very good progress training, you know, 3 times a week, I would say. Obviously the split is just going to differ dependent on the days that you can commit to. So step 1 is choose a split that you can commit to. For me, that is 4 days per week, just because I've tried 5 and I was really struggling from a recovery perspective. So the second thing is, once you've got your days, that's really going to determine your split. So there's a few different options you can go down. If you're training 3 days a week, you're probably looking at an upper, lower, full body split. If you're training 4 days a week, you can go similar split to me, like a pull push leg split with 2 different leg sessions, or you could do a upper lower with like 2 upper and 2 lower sessions. Honestly, this is going to very much depend on what body parts you need to bring up. So for me, I've not got any crazy lagging body parts. We did want to bring up my hamstrings a bit more, which is why I basically hit like glutes and hams 3 times a week in my pull, in my quad focused, and in my glute and ham focus. So that's something you probably want to consider, is there anything you really want to work on? Because if you do, you're better off hitting that body part more frequently as you go through the week, all right? So say if you wanted to work on, you know, shoulders more, for example, you might do an upper lower split, but you might prioritize shoulders more so in both of those upper sessions. You might even add a little bit more side delts onto one of your leg sessions. So this is just thinking about what you specifically want to work on for yourself. And then the other thing, if you're doing a 5-day split, you can go more, the most common one is probably pull push legs upper lower. So that just rotates round, obviously, with more sessions, okay? So it really depends on A, how often you can train, and B, are there any areas you want to work on? And then the third and final point to consider with your training is, what is your recovery capability like? Because if you are, you know, you want to make sure when you are training, you're able to actually recover from the volume you are doing. So if you're training more frequently, you know, you're probably going to find initially your sessions have to be a bit shorter so you can actually recover and go into your next session feeling fresh. And then as your recovery improves, you can maybe start to add a little bit volume into your training sessions and progress those in that way. So they are your 3 key points to consider when you're looking at your split. Some people can't recover from training legs 3 times a week. Some people can. So again, it's just finding what's going to work for you and implementing that. Once you've got your split and you've written yourself a good program, or you've got support with a good program, Honestly, you don't need to change that through the dieting, through the prep. Like I said, my split has literally been the same now for over a year. It hasn't changed. The only thing we are looking at tweaking is adding in some dumbbell pressing, because I've got a little bit of an issue at the minute with shoulder stability. So it's little tweaks like that. It doesn't have to be a whole rewrite of the program. It might just be maybe you're stalling an exercise so you can swap that in for a new exercise. So that's really the only thing that you need to consider when you are looking at maybe changing your training. So hopefully this has been helpful. I'm going to keep this video a little bit shorter. If these videos are helpful, let me know. And if you are someone that is currently struggling with your own training, you would like more support with reaching your physique goals and doing this in the right way for you, then drop me a follow on Instagram, and the inquiry link for my coaching is in my bio on Instagram, or feel free to message me and we can just have a little bit of a chat and go from there. But hopefully this has been helpful, and yeah, I will be back very soon.